Isn't it beautiful when things just come together?
Time's gone inside out.
Build a beautiful website with Squarespace.
Time gets to start again.
Blog Talk Radio.
Another episode of Wake Up African People, and this is the Truth Doctor, along with Astro Ra and Queen Ebony, coming to you tonight. We have Dr. Randy Short, activist, coming on tonight, and Astro Black, me, and Queen Ebony will be asking him questions that only he can ask with his expertise in the field, working for our people. Astro Black, the mic is yours.
Yes, yes, sir. Brothers and sisters, good evening. How are you out there? Stay strong and stay black. We're in a very urgent situation, and the time has come for people to wake up and realize the extreme status of the black community in resisting white supremacy, global white supremacist campaign to genocide our communities in all parts of the globe. Tonight we have Dr. Randy Short, who is a PhD out of Howard University, who have studied African studies. He's also the president and national spokesperson of the Anti-Depo-Provera Clergy Coalition. He's a community organizer with the Black Autonomy Network, and also the secretary of the board for the Rebecca Project for Justice and Human Rights. He's also affiliated with the upcoming Million Women's March and 1 Million Women's Movement. Dr. Randy Short is a professor and researcher who's on the cutting edge. He's a journalist as well as a TV and multimedia correspondent. He's a writer, human rights activist, and a brother who's down to get on the front lines and down for the cause of elevating the consciousness, the awareness, and the direct action activism of our people against this genocidal machine meant to destroy the planet as well as our family structures. Dr. Randy Short has been instrumental in unearthing the facts, links, and documentation connecting the American white supremacist pharmaceutical industry complex that has unleashed the Ebola virus on Western African nations as a weapon of biological warfare. Dr. Short also uncovered the covert terrorist agenda of the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA, to fund and equip the Boko Haram murder squads in Nigeria. Dr. Randy Short is also on the front lines doing media correspondence with international media organizations around the globe about what's happening in regards to the ongoing lynchings and the exacerbation of the white supremacist wholesale campaign of violence against our people. You may not know of him visually because he has been barred from a lot of the mainstream corporate media machines that are here in the United States because of his perspective and the fact that he's bringing truth and factual and definable information about what is going on in regards to the assassinations and the lynchings and the subterfuge used to spread confusion, death, and destruction in the black community here in America, but in other parts of the world as well, especially in Africa and Asia. Dr. Randy Short, are you there with us? Has he been able to call in?
I don't think he's with us. Is he calling from a 718 number?
It should be from a two. It should be from a.
Dr. Short, is this you? No, I think this is a New York number. He's not in there yet. Why don't you try to hail him?
All right, I'll give him another call.
Make sure you give him the right number. Yes. We can't wait to see Dr. Short. It sounds like this is going to be a very exciting show tonight once we get him in here. We're hoping to have him very shortly. Be patient with us. Sometimes this is a technical difficulty that we can't get past. So we're waiting on him to get in here. So while we wait for him...
Are there any... what numbers are coming up on the log? Do you have anything?
No, the only numbers up on the log now is the numbers that we are on, and one more person that I know who that is from Detroit.
All right. Well, for brothers and sisters who are out there who have been following the Boko Haram case or especially have been exposed to the media campaign and the propaganda to spread confusion about the Ebola situation, what they were calling was an epidemic in West Africa. I initially was able to find the links between the pharmaceutical industrial complex, and that the Department of Defense and the Center for Disease Control actually have patents on books for the Ebola virus and have been using it as a biological agent after being developed here to depopulate newly established independent Western African nations. And for those of you who've been following the story, they have found untapped oil and gold, as well as other precious mineral resources in the nations in question, including Liberia and Sierra Leone and Guinea-Bissau. So the Ebola virus, just like the smallpox blankets that have been used to decimate our peoples and other native peoples here on this continent to get access to the land and to the resources under the feet of the chosen people. They have been doing this in our time, on our watch, on the continent of Africa. Dr. Randy Short hasn't been able to get on with American media outlets because he has uncovered this factual information and is able to provide documentation and the direct links and the facts of how this is going on. But incidentally, he also shared to me the fact that because he has been so very vocal and persistent about deciphering this information to the world, and especially to our people, he has been put on the terrorist watch list by the United States government. So this is state policy, the genocide, the global genocide of African peoples here as well in the continent, where so many of the precious metals and materials for the nuclear weaponry come from, is state policy. And those who are trying to decipher the clues and the madness and decipher the information so that people are able to be informed and protect themselves are being silenced, neutralized, and criminalized. Dr. Randy Short has studied African studies at Howard University, and he's a prime example of another one of our leaders in our time and speakers who's being targeted by the United States white supremacist government because he is a black person who is thinking and speaking strategically. How are we doing now, Akbar? Hello?
Hello?
Yes, Dr. Randy Short.
Yes, forgive me, my phone battery is not working properly, so I'm going to have to be very careful with my phone as it charges.
Okay.
But I certainly thank you for having me come to your program today, Brother Ryan. And
thank you for being here. I know you've been through a lot over the last few days and last few weeks like the rest of us. How are you out there?
While I'm here, I'm looking at the fact that a black homeless man died this morning after being shot by police in Venice Beach, California. A man in his 20s was killed for no reason at all by a black police officer in Los Angeles. So I'm happy to be here under the circumstances. Every day is a new day to do my little part as a human being to resist social injustice.
Phenomenal. Thank you for being here and bringing truth and informative information to our listening audience. While we have you on the phone, let's dig right into it. in reference to the urban assault campaign in which the Baltimore police engaged in a rock-throwing exchange with our black youth last Monday, you have said in the past that this was our, quote, Soweto moment. Can you please lay out the background for the targeting of black youth in Baltimore for our listening audience in the immediate aftermath of the lynching of Freddie Gray?
Well, in all honesty, we need to look at the fact that black youth have been targeted actually going back now essentially 70 years. Black youth have been targeted for the last 70 years as the growing numbers of young black people in urban areas became an issue for social sciences and social scientists to study and to determine their future. There's a very fine research monograph done by E. Franklin Frazier called Black Youth at the Crossroads, published in 1937, I believe, by Schlocken Press. And they were pointing out all the problems that young black people would have in a segregated urban environment with a lack of opportunities, jobs, and inferior education. This was in the 1930s. So if you jump by decades, in the middle 1940s, you had Gunnar Myrdal's An American Dilemma, which came out in the middle 40s, the subsequent decade. And the decade that followed, you had the Brown versus Board of Education case, but you also had different people doing research on what's going on with young black people. And in the subsequent decade, in reaction to changes that black youth were driving in the country, let us be mindful of the fact that it was concern for young black people's education that started the modern civil rights movement, that did not begin with Rosa Parks, but more so it came out of Mississippi and the regional council of Negro leaders that was started by T.R.M. Howard in the 1940s. And before the NAACP was really doing anything in Mississippi, and before the Southern Christian Leadership Conference existed. And so it was a concern for the future of black youth, where you got movements among adults who were parents or people concerned about the future. You see, there's an unstated understanding that things in this country are completely screwed up for those blacks who are of mature and adult ages. And there's always been the illogical optimism that somehow things could be made better for the new generation. This expectation of blacks, as well as the expectation of whites to preserve white privilege, brings us to loggerheads. And of course, following the 50s, in reaction to this movement for education and improved opportunities for black youth, you had the COINTELPRO program of 1965, which was a vast conspiracy, assassination. It is a program, basically a soft genocide program started by the FBI. We need to also remember that in 1945-46, the concern for black youth brought the U.S. white elites, both Republican and Democratic, to buy out the NAACP leadership to be against human rights and full social rights for African Americans in exchange for liberal monies. So black youth have been a problem for decades. What has happened in Baltimore, a city that has been very critical to the black struggle, Baltimore was the most important southern city for the Underground Railroad. It was a place in which blacks resisted. Frederick Douglass, perhaps the greatest black man of the 19th century, got his political education on the docks with black men craftsmen who fought and stood up to white people in the 1820s and 30s. Baltimore, at one point, was the largest black urban community in the country until it was superseded by Washington, D.C. So you have a long history of blacks in Baltimore, in particular among the young, being active. Many people are not aware, but young black people in Baltimore, including Thurgood Marshall, who grew up in Baltimore, Billie Holiday, a man named Boynton, who was studying in Baltimore with their black college there, Morgan State University and Coppin State University. Baltimore has had a history of producing young black leaders. The Mitchell family, a black political dynasty, one of the most successful anti-lynching campaigns in the history of this country, was launched by young Baltimoreans in the middle 1930s in response to lynchings that were going on in the Eastern Shore, which is a part of the state of Maryland on the other side of the Chesapeake Bay, where black people continue to live virtually as slaves. Baltimore has always produced rebels. Billie Holiday's song, Strange Fruit, she was a young woman tired of lynching from Baltimore and got on the FBI surveillance list for her protest lyrics. Cab Calloway from Baltimore. Many people don't understand, but there was an assertion of blackness, black pride, urban pride in his music and in his performance. This has come out of this black community in Baltimore for decades. I'm not remembering Clarence Mitchell, Sr. Clarence Mitchell was called the 101st Senator. He was such an effective spokesperson for black rights until senators talked to this black man from Baltimore. He had a wife, Lily Mae Jackson, as a young black woman, was one of the greatest female activists of any generation of our people out of the city of Baltimore. The city of Baltimore had a very strong Black Panther Party, a very strong Republic of New Africa Party. They've had a history of producing people who don't take a lot of mess. And as a result, blacks have also in Baltimore been able to use the ballot longer than perhaps any major urban black community in the country. That's going back to, say, the 1840s. Young blacks created the first independent political party in the city of Baltimore in the 1880s. So it is a hard nut to crack in terms of black resistance. And so the young people in Baltimore had been targeted even prior to now. Within 10 years of the COINTEL Counterpro project, there was a group of young black people called Black October that had an assassination campaign against the pushers, bringing heroin and hard drugs into the black areas of Baltimore. And, of course, the mafia, the crooked Baltimore Police Department, and the FBI had these young radicals assassinated. So there's been a long effort for people to understand that Baltimore is not just any old city, it is a port city. It was, when there was an effort to destroy the United States by Great Britain in the War of 1812, they burned Washington on August 23rd, 24th, 1814, but they didn't feel like they could really close in on winning the war without taking the city of Baltimore, from which we get the Star-Spangled Banner song. And within that Star-Spangled Banner song, I always share with people, the third stanza of the song alludes to blacks who had joined the British Army and had formed a battalion that defeated American forces, white American forces, at the Battle of Bladensburg in 1814. So anyone familiar with the history of the region knows that Baltimore is the touchstone for black radicalism south of Philadelphia in the Mid-Atlantic region. And young black Baltimoreans have had a history going back to the early 60s and then the late 60s, not only sending students down south to fight for black rights, but also fighting with white businesses, fighting against the state democratic machine, forcing the Republicans to take a civil rights stance. This was done by young black Baltimoreans, and this hasn't really been done anywhere else in the country, and most of the time people don't talk about it. So they were targeted for drugs, targeted for the city to be deracinated and denied the economic needs it means because they didn't want a strong, viable, vocal black community in Baltimore. And so it has been compromised over the decades by different mayors and people who claim they're going to build the city up, and what they've meant is they're going to make the areas for tourists and for whites nice, while the blacks have suffered neoliberal neglect in Baltimore longer than any place, with the exception of maybe Gary, Indiana.
That's interesting, Dr. Short. That's very interesting. You just gave me a whole college education on Baltimore. And let me tell you this. These people is devilish and devious, and that's one of the reasons why we have these shows, so people can listen to people like yourself, esteem people like yourself, and try to get knowledge outside the mainstream media that's telling you nothing. I want to ask you this question.
Media is completely, the mainstream media is infiltrated by CIA and other agents. That was documented in the Frank Church Commission hearings in the early 70s. It's called Operation Mockingbird. I worked in the news media, and it seemed as if I'm certain there were intelligent people. They don't trust real investigative journalists. They're no more Edward R. Murrows. We're talking about some honest white folks that want to look. All these people, Wolf Blitzer, he's out of AIPAC. He's a Mossad asset. These people work for the intelligence agencies to keep the people under control. And this has been understood since the emergence of the Krill Commission in 1917, and people like Edward Bernays and others have understood the use of the media is to control and to misinform people for purposes other than what the people are aware of. I need to say one more thing about Baltimore. Baltimore has had for the last 30 years that I'm aware of, over and over and over again, these new schemes for redevelopment of the city of Baltimore. I've been hearing it since I was a child. The only thing I've seen is with the Inner Harbor, where they had Mayor Schaefer, where they dumped money in areas of the city that didn't need it, while they did absolutely nothing for the neglected areas. They knocked the projects down. They got rid of that. They've moved a lot of the industries out of the area, and yet when the money has come in, it's either been misappropriated, stolen. People need to know Maryland is among the 10th most corrupt state in the country. It's in the top 10 out of 50. That Baltimore is the epicenter of white theft of monies being allocated that has supposedly changed the quality of life for African Americans, and that includes the Democratic Party. There is the most corrupt, dirty, sinister, racist Democratic Party anywhere in the country, and I'll stand by saying that there is a cabal of black, closeted homosexuals who work with white, racist, Dixiecrat, neo-George Wallace-type Democrats who get blacks to vote for their own exploitation and abuse decade after decade, and absolutely nothing is done about it. The area in which this boy, Freddie Gray, who I believe is related to me because the Grays are my relatives, that neighborhood was supposed to have been a model for economic development and growth, and the monies have been stolen or misallocated. They disappear. And I need to say one more thing. The black people in Baltimore have been the greatest victims of human experimentation and exploitation through the Johns Hopkins University and the NIH and the others have made Baltimore a theme park for unethical, non-consensual experimentation on black people. And a whole bunch of folks, the things that you'd be surprised by, that Freddie Gray had lead paint exposure, as a lot of other people did. They deliberately painted the buildings with lead. In fact, there was a project that Johns Hopkins University was trying to induce poor black families that needed somewhere to live to move them into houses where there was lead paint, to watch how the lead exposure killed or damaged the development of young black people. This isn't my imagination. This has happened within the last 10, 12 years. And this is the kind of thing that they do to the people in Baltimore as well. They've used the television, that show The Wire, to denigrate and to make people feel that the black community in Baltimore is worthless and full of just drug-addicted people with no value whatsoever. And yet they've never looked at the mass movements, groups like Janitor for Justice or Brother Darren Muhammad. They have lots of strong grassroots movements that have fought for decades against the corrupt black neck leaders and the crooked people like Governor Schiffer, like all the other white governors. And it is a shame that these people who are telling the truth, there are even whites involved working with blacks, Karen Black and the other people that I know in Baltimore, there is even some black and white working together, and they don't even want you to see that. You always say black and white together. Where you do have black and whites are supporting the black agenda, you'll never hear about it.
You know, the name we call them type of Negroes are Negropeans. And that's a Negro with a European mindset. And I just want to back up to Edward Bernays. A lot of people don't know about him, and I want to tell them that he's the father of modern social engineering through advertisement. Is that right, Mr. Short?
Yeah, you can say doctor if you're going to put a title on it. He's the nephew of Sigmund Freud. He's the mastermind of operations against movements of African and black people around the world. He had a book called Propaganda. I even have some quotes up. Maybe I can run them down if I can find them. But the man was evil. He lived to be 108 years old. In fact, he was on the New England board of the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund. He was the engineer for the propaganda for the coups in Guatemala, Iran, and Ghana, and other places. In fact, helped train the CIA people. In fact, his mentees took over the agenda for how the NAACP would rebrand itself 50 years ago this September. That's how evil these people are. In fact, Bernays was the one who made smoking popular for women. Bernays is one of the people that helped promote abortion, helped promote gay rights. Every bad and wicked thing that's come down, he helped push it. If you eat bacon and eggs for breakfast, that was his idea. They learned through mass psychology that most people don't know why they do what they do. If you can influence them without them knowing, you control them.
Exactly. And our people don't know how strong this media is. This media is the new religion. Christianity is nothing compared to television and social engineering through the media these days and time. And, I'll be trying to tell people, if you don't understand these televisions, turn them off. Don't let your kids watch them, and be very, very careful about what you watch and take into your mind. Because these people are totally evil, like you said. And I want to ask you about this place in Liberia. I was watching a documentary called Monkey Island. And on Monkey Island, at first they were experimenting on monkeys with AIDS, Ebola, all this type of different diseases and everything, white scientists. And then when they claimed that Charles Taylor came into power, they had to leave Liberia. So they released these monkeys infected on this island. Do you know anything about that any deeper?
I don't, but I know that Ebola, we need to say it properly if you're going to talk about this. There's a difference between Ebola and Ebola Budibugyo. One is made in the laboratory, if not both. But Ebola Budibugyo is a U.S. held patent that was developed in Atlanta through the U.S. Department of Health between, say, 2008 and 2010. And there are patents for at least 2 strains that the U.S. government has. That is a fact. So, and it's a combination of several Ebolas. Not one, but a super Ebola. That's what got let loose in Africa last year through an NIH program. People need to remember that they can look it up. All they need to do is don't believe what they hear over the radio. They can use this computer to do something other than try to hook up with someone, and put in Google Ebola and patent, and it'll be right there. Jonathan S. Towner and these other people doing work along with Tulane University, with the United States Military Research Infectious Disease Institute. I'm forgetting it, but it's USMRIID, I think. That, and it's based out in Fort Detrick, Maryland, and they worked with the Department of Health and Tulane University, and they let this stuff loose. And there was a big program. In fact, Obama cut the funding for it after I and a few other people began to denounce the government for killing the people in Africa. And I'm on a terror watch list. I got searched twice coming back from Tennessee to the U.S. And when I went to Canada, the Canadians told me the U.S. government was mad at me for bringing up the stuff on Ebola. I mean, if I had lied, they should have come and arrested me. The fact that I'm being harassed means I told the truth. It's a U.S. government weapon. And it was let loose in an area of Sierra Leone called Kenema. By the way, the woman who runs Liberia is a thug, Sirleaf Johnson. She worked for the World Bank. She didn't win the election. She's a U.S. stooge. She's corrupt. She's a crook. And I don't think they mind. She's been the one person in Africa begging for U.S. troops to be stationed in their country. That's to keep her in power. So Ebola, creating a crisis, killing the poor Liberians that are not American Liberians, was of little consequence to her. In fact, if it created enough of a crisis, there'd be aid money she could steal, as well as U.S. soldiers to back up. You know, Liberia has oil, and this woman, Sirleaf Johnson, who looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger with the hat on, tried to make her son as head of the National Petroleum Company. That's the level of croniness. So Liberia and Sierra Leone are among the most corrupt countries in the world. And they let those people in because Liberia is essentially owned by the Rockefeller family. You may hear Firestone, which has the plantation, but the Firestones are Jews married to the Rockefellers, who might also be Jewish. And folks lie about it, say they're Baptists. You can call yourself anything. We have a history of people saying they're Catholic and there's something else, saying they're Lutheran and there's something else. I mean, just ask Madeleine Albright. I mean, what was she calling herself until she decided to come out and tell people? What are the people that run Turkey? Who are they and what are they about? And why is it that they're denying that they did genocide on the Armenians who are Christians? Muslims don't tend to do that. The only group of people known that just want to wipe out Christians, you know who that is. They happen to be Jewish. That's you can see that in the former Soviet Union. You can see that through Jewish-dominated communist parties that persecute the church perhaps worse than any other institution in Eastern Europe, China, or any place else. That's just a fact. Whereas the Chinese, it may not have been an ethnic thing, but there's a beef between the Khazars and the church, and that's long-standing. So Ebola was made. In fact, even the people who worked on Ebola, it's just like AIDS. The same sorts of people. They're in France and Belgium. The same people who are involved in these depopulation schemes seem to have the same overlapping relationships. You don't even have to know all the people's names to start seeing. If you do a little bit of research, you'll start seeing certain hands, certain institutes involved. Kaiser Wilhelm, there's one in Belgium. All these people seem to always be involved in these highly infectious diseases. You can go online and Google. The German government had real problems with sending to the United States some Ebola-type viruses that they felt could be used as a weapon. And the U.S. government promised them that it would not be used. This is what governments are saying. So, you know, if you get a cynical black person, I'm going to just say this, some black people can't be saved. They really don't want to know the answers to their questions and don't like anyone that does have the answer. And we have to really get to the point where if you don't want to know, you know,
don't even listen to me, don't come around me, and don't ask me, since you really don't want to know. You won't look for yourself, won't research for yourself, and anyone that does read and research, you don't want to hear them. You're doomed. You can't be helped, and they will get rid of you. That's how I feel about a certain type of black person. They're a waste of time, and they wait until it's too late or till their child gets shot by the cops before there's a problem with police brutality, or their home gets taken, and then they realize there's predatory lending. I just have to put that out as a sidebar, because when you talk, we don't have 10, 20 hours to put all this information out for you. What white folks do is when they hear something, they take notes. Take out a pen or a pencil. Take some notes on what's being said, then go and do your own research. It's amazing that people think that truth can be spoon-fed to them in just a handful of minutes. If you go fast, you left something out. If you go too slow, they fall asleep. If you try to tell it all, you run out of time. So I go as fast as I can in order to cover the topics. You're adults. If you can pay for the Internet to look at porn, you can use the Internet to look up facts and reality. We need some discipline in our community and some wiser use of time. Give us, if the people that were serious like you, brother, if we got 10% of the time that Lil Wayne and Mary J. Blige and Beyonce and Jay-Z and the Soulja Boy got, we'd be getting somewhere as a people. I think you agree with me on that.
I sure do, because it's all socially engineered and to dumb Negroes and also white folks down. Because most Americans don't have a clue. But the Anglo-Saxon is just as much as a slave to the Jew, the small hats, than we are. But it's like a caste system of people that's oppressed. And I want to bring Astro Black and Queen Ebony in to see if they want to ask you some questions before we let some of these callers in. Queen Ebony, do you have any questions for the doctor?
Yes, I just basically wanted to say thank you, brother, for coming on and giving us the information that can be shared with our people. And you made a valid point about time and our time management and how us as a people, we're wasting our time on frivolous things instead of obtaining the information and passing it on to family members and our children. So I just wanted to say I really appreciate you, and I want to listen to more of the information that you have, and I'm really excited for you to be on our show tonight.
Thank you. What I recommend, brother, and I can do this with Ryan, there are a couple of things that I think would be very helpful to your audience, and I'll send them to Ryan. I work with the Rebecca Project for Justice and Human Rights. It's a very small human rights group, and most of our work is protecting and advocating for the human rights of African American women. And I need to say, any black man that's not in some organization trying to protect black women, not only from white folks, but from black men, he's not serious about liberation, because our women are not safe in this country. We haven't protected them. We wonder why they have bad attitude. We wonder why they'll pick a tough brute who may not know how to treat them because they feel unsafe. It's because we haven't protected our women from the time that they're born, from the time they're being carried until they come to maturity. Our women have had to be men and women at the same time. You make a man and a woman the same thing, you've got a freak. And we complain about the freak, but we don't deal with the fact that we allowed that to happen. And so I'm very proud to be associated with the Rebecca Project, working under our head, Sister Elaine Riddick, who was sterilized at 14 because she was raped when she was 13. And she's led up the whole movement to force states to pay reparations to the victims of genocidal sterilization done to women and boys from the 1920s into the 1980s in this country. The other group, I have to give all respect to the originator, founder, and president of the Million Woman Movement, Sister Empress Philae, who is heading up the memorial for the move anniversary where they bombed black women and babies in Philadelphia on May 13th, 1985, and it was a black man, at least he looked black, named Wilson Good, who did this, and they rewarded and made him a rich man. In addition to that, so we have 2 reports on Depo-Provera, something that every woman should know. I hear you're out of Detroit, and they experimented on black women in the middle 60s in Detroit before this drug was even legal, called Depo-Provera, or the birth control shot. This drug is also linked to HIV/AIDS, and where Ebola hit most heavily, in Sierra Leone and Liberia and in Guinea, were places where Depo-Provera was being put in girls as young as 9 years old. Depo-Provera destroys the immunity of women, and this is why I believe women died more from Ebola than men, because their immunity had been compromised by drug, pushed by the Pfizer Corporation, pushed by President Obama, pushed by Bill and Melinda Gates, pushed by the NAACP, Legal Defense and Education Fund, as well as the Congressional Black Caucus, ranking member on the African Committee, Subcommittee for African Affairs, Karen Bass, Congresswoman from Los Angeles. We have 2 reports, one on non-consensual experimentation and one on Depo-Provera. In addition to that, I do have a document or 2 on population control, as well as the actual patent document, because they pulled some of it off of websites on Ebola. What I can do is leave an email. I mean, that's the best way. I don't have a website yet, but if you email me, I can just send you the documents I have, as well as some of the links to where the German government said that they didn't want to give this to the U.S. My email is W as in water, my name, Randy, RANDY, SHORT@gmail.com, or through Twitter at Randy Short. So you can reach me, and I try to respond to people as well. I will send these things to Ryan. I'm certain he'll get those out. I want to go back and deal something and remind people that there is a very good documentary done by a group of right-wing blacks and whites called Maafa 21. You can get Maafa 21 online, Maafa, MAAFA 21.org, and watch a 2-hour and 30-minute film showing how they have a plan to eliminate black people. The other thing I'm going to point to you, there's a man by the name of Boyd, B-O-Y-D, Ed, E-D, Graves, Graves. You can put in his name and put in Special Cancer Virus Program, and you'll see that the government of the United States had a plan for reducing the population of black people and brown people. There is a person, a lot of black folks like President Johnson. Lyndon Baines Johnson hated African American people, desperately so. Lyndon Baines Johnson increased the monies that the United States government gave to Planned Parenthood, which was originally the American Birth Control League, started by the racist lesbian that married a Jew named Margaret Sanger. The American Birth Control League started in 1916. Her idea was that black people were human weeds, that black preachers should be used to help exterminate black people slowly and carefully. Margaret Sanger is discussed in this film, Maafa 21, and if you don't get it there, trust me, there is another website called blackgenocide.org. You know how to spell black, genocide spelled GENOCIDE.org. There's plenty of information all over the internet. If people use their time, they don't have to have any special guest speakers. Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, most of our great black folks from the early times were self-educated. We know they're not teaching us in the schools. They're shutting down the black schools, black colleges and universities, unless you want to be a sissy or something like that. And you could learn how to do that with your cousin when you're 10. You don't need to go to a university and take a debt from the government to learn how to do something you have no business doing. You've got to educate yourself. There's Black Agenda Report. There are websites where folk are publishing, putting out great information, and they don't have a following. It's amazing. I could put Beyonce's private parts up and I could get 10 million hits. I can put up something very serious and get 10. And no matter how many people I send it to, they're not going to look at it. I don't know if folks are spiritual. I am. We need to pray for folks' eyes to open up, and that's real talk. The people who stand up and speak up don't have the money or the resources by design. Those that do, take someone like Oprah Winfrey. I think a frustrated, lying switch hitter, that's how I see it, who's lied on her family and won't tell the truth. She didn't go through half of that. She told that story to get white folks to like her, and they now use her to misguide black people. That's why they gave her $1 billion. And they'll give Michael Jordan $1 billion because he's married to a white woman and he invests in the jails in Cook County and all over the state of Illinois where blacks are mass incarcerated and abused and killed. That's what the so-called successful black first. We're going to be the first people in history to create an elite that helps wipe us out after already knowing what the end was going to be. No other group of people produced a greater number of traitors and enemies to their existence than we have. And it's left to us to educate self, find other people who think in terms of black survival and prosperity and liberation, not only from white folk, but from black neck sellout, Democratic, Republican Party, I don't care, Masonic, Boule. We've got to get up from under them because they're helping keep us here. And depopulation is the plan. I want to say to people that a lot of folks used to laugh at this man, humble man from rural Georgia. His name was the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He was saying a lot of this stuff 60 years ago, and people laughed at the Muslims, made fun of them. He warned us about the diet, warned us about the scientists. Whether he was using a metaphor or not, it's true. He told the truth. We've had people telling us whether they're Christian, Muslim, or whether they're Moors, telling us the truth. And we don't have to necessarily follow somebody's religion, but take the information and use that and apply it to your situation for enlightenment to fight for your freedom. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad told us about food. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad told us what they're trying to do to our family between men and women. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad told us to watch out for what they're trying to do. He told us that birth control was a trap. He told us we had to have our own farms we have to do for self. The NAACP didn't tell you to do for yourself. The Urban League didn't tell you to do for yourself. The NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund didn't tell you to do for self. The Congressional Black Caucus didn't tell you to do for yourself. And the nigger preachers at these churches that are making themselves rich, asking you to buy their jets, aren't telling you to do for yourself.
Mm-mm. They're telling you to do for them. I think I had cut Brother Astro off. You call him Brother Ryan, but we call him Brother Astro. I think he's back with us. Brother Astro, are you back with us?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Thank you for the galvanizing manifesto, Brother Randy. Dr. Short. Hey, so moving along, it's fair to say that many of our listeners out there are not ignorant at all of the direct and undeniable partnership between the Ku Klux Klan, Aryan Brotherhood, and other AB clubs, and the American police state at all levels of government.
And can we add one more? They're allied with the blacks in the Democratic Party because the police constitute a union, and because the unions are partnered with the Democratic Party. The Congressional Black Caucus and every black caucus in this country and every city in this country is in alignment with the police officers that torture and kill and rape our girls and boys. Yes, they are. There's no doubts about it. That's why you'll never see one of those people have any kind of hearing or investigation or inquiry of any kind against the police, no matter how many people get killed, because they need the cooperation of the unions. And so, therefore, they stand together. And it gets worse. If you have contingents within these unions, which you do, that represent either feminist or gay interest, then it's interesting. If you would encounter police violence against gays, there would be an immediate response because their constituency would not stand for it, even if someone just got hit. It's amazing that the black constituency, your black members in your state legislatures and everywhere else, would speak up if one homosexual were harmed. But if thousands of blacks were killed, there's silence. And someone explained it to me, a very prominent black trade unionist told me that they had to be mindful of their partners, which are the Jews, the gays, the liberals, and therefore things that were pertinent for black people to ask for, they tended not to ask for because they didn't want to offend their partners asking for something too black. It always had to be muddied. It had to be a little gay, a little black, a little brown, a little yellow, a little white. Well, we don't have problems like that. We just have black folk getting killed, black folks' homes getting stolen, black folks hungry, black folks homeless, black folks being wiped out. It's not murky, it's not muddy. It's us and nobody but us. The police had their origins, not just in their origins in slave catchers. In fact, the Fugitive Slave Acts of 1790, 1820, and of course, other acts that occurred in 1850. That's where the police come from. The police are to make sure that either blacks and or Indians were kept under control. In fact, the Bureau of Indian Affairs has their own police force to go down and kill the Indians when they get out of line. The guns and the militias and the right to bear arms and all that stuff is completely interwoven with the fact that you have a captive workforce that is hostile to its enslavement and exploitation, and you'll have to use deadly, lethal, coercive force to maintain a system where a few light-skinned white folk benefit at the expense of the super exploitation of blacks and others. In fact, some of their own whites who are super exploited, but they derive vicarious status from the whites who live in well, the same way we worship fat-ass Oprah Winfrey and all the other little stupid athletes that run around getting busted every week with drugs in their car with white girls, and the stupid musicians who make hateful music about our women and our community and make us look like a race of hedonists. We look up to them somehow as if they're going to do something for us, and they never do.
Now, they never even mention anything. I mean, to put any of them on the scale of a Muhammad Ali, there's no one.
None of them equal. In fact, they killed Arthur Ashe with AIDS. Even Arthur Ashe, Jackie Robinson, not one. I mean, you get all of them together with their hundreds of millions of dollars, and they're useless. What? You get a $50 million contract so you can throw $100,000 a night at strippers, perhaps black girls enslaved, taken from their homes, kept in cages like a pit bull dog, and that's black success? Excuse me. I'd rather be in the projects.
Mm-hmm. And they neutralized Jim Brown. At least he was trying to speak up and bring them athletes together to do something for the black community.
Well, they could do something. Let me tell you, I get tired of black cripples. You know, am I in a race or am I in a breed of Special Olympians where just nobody can do anything? They don't even have to be seen. If Booker T. Washington, the coon of the 19th century, could give money for lawsuits, if he could do stuff under the table for black folks when he wasn't cooning, why can't these people simply put some money in the blind trust for the families where the police shoot someone? Do you understand? It could be blind. They wouldn't even have to know who got it. They don't care. You see, the idea of success in this country is abandoning your other people to be wiped out. We have to boycott these people. We should be at we should not go to their games. We should be throwing tennis shoes and eggs at them, cussing them out. They should be afraid to come to the community because their people are so angry at them. People should be burning their jerseys on television, telling them, don't come back to that neighborhood. If we get you, we go get you. That would make some of these people have a breakdown. Why they hate me so much? They hate you because you sold out. We need to retaliate against these people. The beginning of order in our community would be calling the traitors to task. I may not be able to bring down the racist Anglo-American oppressing me, but I can get his slave. I can find him. That's how every social progress movement goes. Even the white Anglo-Americans, when they wanted to go after the king, who'd they go after? They went after his tax collectors. If you come and try to collect taxes for that guy in England, we're going to get you. Even though it's just your job, stop doing your job or we do you. When are we going to do that to our traders? In Detroit, find out who's working at the water department. If you cut someone's water out, your car is going to disappear or a brick going to go through the window. Stop willingly going along with what's being done to us.
Are we listening, Leffy?
I've had a job. I had a job not supposed to do something to black folk. I didn't do it. They can't make me do it. I'm not. You don't pay me enough to do that. I remember I had an assignment. I was supposed to abuse a black woman. I wouldn't do it. A Jewish woman told me I didn't have managerial skills because I wouldn't mistreat this sister. You know, they brought off. I'm telling you, I worked for the public television, and they dropped off about 2,000 pounds of video tape stock. There were 6 whites and 1 black. Black was female. They told me to ask the black girl to move it all. Not one of the whites asked. In fact, couldn't ask the white folks. So I moved most of it, had her move just a little bit, and they were mad. But I wasn't going to do that to the sister. They didn't pay me enough to treat one of my own like that. I can't do that. I see so many black folks who want to impress white people with how much they hate their own. And I'm telling you, word gets around fast. If we made an example in every community of the most sellout person, all the other sellouts will get scared. Now, older brother, I'm forgetting your name, but remember when even the light-skinned folks who used to be arrogant were putting vinegar in their hair so they could get afros so they didn't get beat up? When black was beautiful, everybody was trying to be black because they were scared. We need to put the fear of the rage of the black community into our traders, that we're going to get you. Whites may get us, we're going to get you first. They did that in South Africa.
Yeah, or like the fear they used to have when the Nation of Islam would come through the neighborhood. The drug dealers would hide their drugs.
No Buster Squad. They did it in Algeria. They did it in Haiti. They did it in New York with the first strikes against Con Edison and the Omnibus Bus Company. Black folks knew to walk. If they caught you in the bus to get you addressed, they're going to come whoop you behind. How dare you ride when we're walking for our freedom? It is a lie that there is a way not to use, that you're going to just have a movement and you don't say anything to anyone. That's some faggot church stuff that even the faggot preachers don't have. When they want you to give your last dollar and let your lights go off and your kids go hungry, they threaten you with hell, that you better give that money or God's going to kill you. Now, that's violent. And yet if I tell someone, if we catch you violating the curfew, we're going to whoop your behind. I mean, what is for all the people to be discriminated against and persecuted because a handful of people are making us fail? When you have a strike, they're called scabs. They beat up the scabs. The unions do it. White folk do it to white people. We're the only people that let the run free. T.D. Jakes' computer should be hacked. What
and Dr. Short,
his stuff should be hacked. I mean, if he's been on one of those little porno things, they should put that up. These people should live in mortal fear of the rage of their community when we're under the pressure that we are by the police and by the state and by the immigrants and everybody that bothers us, and you're helping to do this and you're going to live good. We should never accept that. And it doesn't take much to put some pressure to bear. You live long enough. Remember Sammy Davis was hugging all on Richard Nixon? And all the black folks started burning Sammy Davis records, and Sammy Davis couldn't go to certain places. The black people said, if you come to the airport, we will come get you. Sammy Davis didn't know what to do. But he had betrayed his people, hugging on this man that had the Panther killed, the man who had all these other black political prisoners locked up, the black Liberation Army frame, and Assata Shakur, and he's up on there hugging on this man's behind like they're lovers. We can come down on these people, either not buy from them, but make them understand. You can do that little thing on television in front of white liberals and think you're going to get somewhere, but if we get our hands on you if nothing else, if we turn our backs on you wherever you perform, you will know that you are wrong and you will pay for it. As long as there's no penalty or consequence for being a black-neck traitor, being an enemy to your people, and as long as there's a financial interest that they can gain betraying us without any consequence, there's an incentive to betray your people.
Well, look here, we have some callers in queue, and I'm going to bring one in to see if they have anything to say. Caller with the last four digits, 1200. Yes. Do you have any questions for Dr. Short? Caller with the last four digits, 1200, 718, area code 1200. Do you have anything to ask the doctor? Okay, I don't think this one want to talk. Let me go to this next one there. Hello, caller from Detroit. Do you have anything to ask the doctor? Caller 248-0832. Do you have any questions? Okay, this caller doesn't have any questions. Take that one out. Let me ask this next one. Caller with 0067. Do you have any questions for the doctor? (0067). Oh, 0067 chimed out. Let's check this next one. Well, I think that's it. Nobody wants to ask any questions. So, Queen Ebony, do you have any more questions to ask? Okay. Brother Astro.
Yeah, all right. So moving right along, we talking about the Mama Mobutus and the father motherfuckers who are selling out their youth in collusion with white supremacy and the status quo of being a Sambo and an Uncle Tom in the 21st century. We've talked about this before, but what are some of the implications of the emerging generational split that we're seeing between in the black community and that we were witnessing in America in relation to our direct action and resistance to global white supremacist, sexist capitalism and imperialism?
I'm going to give you a generational response to one of the terms. I don't tend to use the word Sambo. I have an ancestor who is named Sambo. He was born 1761. We believe he was killed during the Nat Turner Revolt in 1831, and his name was Sambo, and our family is from Guinea-Bissau, Senegambia, and Sambo is, my family kept their African names, but as people, another generational change became ashamed of the African name, a lot of people have made Sambo an insult instead of a man that defiantly held on to his African name, contrary to the Kunta Kinte myth that Alex Haley, the fraud and naval intelligence spy snitch, put out there. Everybody didn't give up their name. So my ancestor did not give up his name, and so I don't use Sambo as an insult. And forgive me, I get angry when when people do that, because these people in the heart of rural Virginia, the crucible of the slave experience in America, refuse to give up their African names. And look at the hegemony. They twist around and make it into an insult. Sambo was an educated man who owned his own farm, who had got his own freedom, and was not a coon, and at least the one in my family. And we sued the restaurant and made them change their name. So, you know, if you're going to be conscious, Sambo is a legitimate name. It exists throughout West and Central Africa, and it doesn't mean that the people have no dignity. In fact, it means second-born child in certain languages. A Singbe is similar. It is not an insult or a slur. We should not let them designate the terms and humiliate our names the same way Negus and the other words that they have perverted into nigger. The real original words were dignified of an upright people who've been perverted by a maniacal race of modern but uncivilized people who've manipulated science and history and religion to justify undue enrichment and unjust enrichment of themselves for the last 500 years. So I have to respond to that out of respect for my ancestor. So I'm going to strike Sambo off. Now, I want to say we have an intergenerational problem we always have. When they were bringing people from Africa forcibly enslaved, they had a process called seasoning, where you did whatever you could to destroy the roots of Africa within people so they could become more effective enslaved persons. You had slave breakers, you had slave drivers, you also had all kinds of personalities that evolved. One of them was the mammy. The mammy tended to be a black woman whose job was to serve the white man, to castrate young black boys and teach them to be submissive. You also had a buck breaker, which would be a person who was a sodomite who would sexually abuse strong-willed black males, and slave breakers who used physical brutality. Black parents taught their children. All black parents teach their children to accommodate the system of white supremacy, racism, and apartheid in this country, because you're not taught that if you function as if you're equal at all points, you're going to die young. Anybody that grew up with Jim Crow, if their parents didn't tell them not to drink from the white fountain, they could find themselves in trouble real fast or dead real fast. Emmett Till, Mac Parker, and thousands of other people know if you don't follow the etiquette of the white supremacy system that your own parents taught you. There was some disruption on the line, so I didn't know. There's a mic that's open that's disrupting the sound. Most black parents teach their children to accommodate white supremacy. Some parents are smarter than others. Some parents are really stupid. They're smart in the sense that they're teaching the children how to survive, but to what extent? In fact, one of the problems we have as a people is that we're taught to cling to life so closely to the point where we're afraid to take a stand for practically anything, and just being here doing nothing is successful. And I'm not asking anyone to be suicidal or reckless or silly, but sometimes you have to stand up. You know, my brother died last week on April 30th, but my brother would have died 10 or 12 years earlier, 15 years earlier, had he allowed a Hispanic white to shoot and kill him, trying to submit to the authority of a police officer. He whooped the man's behind, and he lived another 15 years. Of course, my parents would have taught never, ever raise your hand to a law enforcement officer. Okay, that's good Negro speak or Negro-Pian speak. But in reality, if an officer is going to kill you no matter what you do because you're not black, who do you listen to? Mom and dad, or your own instinct that you don't want to die young? So there's always been a dynamic of rebellion against the older generation, because one generation had one experience in which their spirits were broken and their dreams were shattered, and therefore they pass on their experiences to their youth to try to teach them to accommodate being ruled by white people. And that is what happened with that boy in Baltimore. His parents were afraid, and they sold their son out. That boy should have held out. It would have been a very different situation had the police gotten him a week or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 later. There wouldn't have been the same need to put such a high bail on him. But those parents wanted to prove that they were good parents. In their mind, good parents' kids would not destroy a police vehicle. It's interesting that good parents send their kids to Iraq, to Libya, to Syria, to Afghanistan, to Pakistan, to Cuba, to Vietnam, to kill and destroy for white supremacy, power, and privilege. But if you fight at home for it, you're bad. So most black parents, in fact, most black people are perverted by having to live under a system where they're ruled by the Anglo-American apartheid system, where good is what serves white people and bad is what serves black people, meaning if you're black and you're good, you don't do anything for yourself. And so that boy's grandparents and everyone else, and this is part of our dilemma of not having done what people like the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who had his message to the black man. The Black Panthers ran with it as a 10-point program. We must have for self. We must educate self. We must defend self, feed self, clothe self, house self, educate self, and not have a God that looks like a pedophile side piece of an Italian noble, which is what we have. We've got a male prostitute in our minds as God, and he loves everyone but us, and he still gets 10% of our money, and we'll die for him, and we'll even look at the news and watch the real Jews, the real Hebrews, beaten and tear gassed and run over with horses in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, and pretend that these Khazars, or as I say, knockoff Jews, are the real thing. I mean, that's some sickness. So I'm not surprised if they've got a knockoff Jew for a symbol of God on their wall. It's no surprise they didn't tell the boy to bring all the keys of dope they had in the house and take it to the police too. And when it gets to the evidence room, if the police don't snort it or rebag it or sell it themselves, they're going to do some wholesaling themselves. We are not honest. So our parents were trained to believe in the system. In fact, I always say, as a Christian, I meet very few black Christians. I meet Negroes that go to church. They don't believe in an all-powerful God that says that he who the Son sets free is free indeed. We have a different book, and it says when the white man says you're free, you're free. Everything is checkmated in their so-called King James Bible, and everybody knows King James was a faggot with 3 boyfriends who couldn't read or write, so I don't even know why he wanted his name on no Bible, but anyway, that's what we grew up with, and all those these and thous, yeas and yos. We are sick, and until we are whole, we talk about being holy. How can you be holy if the image of God in your mind is has the same look as the person who raped your great-great-grandmother way back when? How can you be whole if your goal was to become middle class and go to a predominantly white church where they don't speak about black issues? How can you be whole when you have blonde streaks in your hair? You've got toxic glue to your scalp pulling out your real hair to put some blonde stuff that you look like a golden marmoset monkey from Africa somewhere. You won't even let some sister work on your nails. You need some Vietnamese who probably wants to kill you because of the Agent Orange killing their cousins and their grandchildren back in Vietnam. And that's got to do your feet, and they got to do your hands. You won't even eat your own food at home, but you need to go to a Chinese restaurant where the grease is blacker than Wesley Snipes and you think you're eating good. You'll buy everything that you need from someone that hates you, and the only thing you'll buy from someone else black is sex or drugs. It's insane.
Yeah. Social engineering sure is very powerful. And Negroes don't understand that they're doing what is programmed into them. Like the television. We had 2 shows that touched on what you said about Negroes creating more Negroes. And one is called the Negro Peeing Making Factory. And the other one is called Black White Supremacists, the most dangerous Negroes in our midst. And it's a shame that you don't have to...
Negro inferiorists. In fact,
yes,
these blacks believe in black inferiority more than they believe in Jesus, more than they believe in white supremacy. Because when they find out a white person isn't superior, it doesn't change them. It just makes them double down on the black inferiority. We had a man, his name is Dr. Nathan Hare, living in Chicago taking care of his ailing wife, Dr. Julia Hare. He did a book called The Black Anglo-Saxons when he taught at Howard University, and they fired him. And before he wrote his book, E. Franklin Frazier did a book called The Black Bourgeoisie in 57. And they were trying to fire him. He died before they could fire him. Toni Morrison was at Howard University. They fired her. Du Bois was at Howard University. They fired him. Tony Brown's Journal, A Conscious Black Man, starts school communications. They fire him. Frances Cress Welsing was at Howard. They fired her. And if you heard just a few months ago, 3 black men were integrating black history with the maths and sciences, and you know they have people from the Department of Homeland Security on the board of the Math and Science School at Howard, so they can find out who the new black scientists are going to be, so they can track them. They had them fired. I mean, I call them black necks. Down in D.C. is full of black necks. Oh, I mean, there's so many traitors down here. Let me tell you, if we had to do a screening thing, you know, some of us came up in the church and we heard the story of Gideon and how he's trying to get an army to free the black people. And they start out with almost 30,000, and God told them, you got to fire half of these niggas because none of them, they really down for no struggle. It went from like almost 30,000 down to 300. You know, that's a significant drop. And that's the situation that we're in. I hate to say it, but a lot of black folks are lost causes right now. I don't know what's got to happen to them. I don't know who's got to kill them. I don't know how many kids need to be in jail or how many cops need to run a train on their grandmother in the foyer of their church before they wake up. But, you know, something's got to give. Something's got to give. And, you know, this happens to, you look at the people, they're destroying your communities, destroying your schools, run your churches out. You know, you pick any city. White folk move in and the gay folk get mad because it's folks are parked up on Sunday. They don't stay there all day. Yeah, and then they want them gone. But if they have a gay block party, they want to run around and what are those things, thongs, grown men. I mean, they get all the licenses they want to do that and do it as many times as they want to. And these are all signs that we're being phased out. Washington State, they just passed an ordinance. If you're a preacher and somebody wants to get married and they're gay, if you don't do it, you're going to go to jail. Pedophilia is next. So it's on the agenda. They're going to bring it in through Hillary Clinton. I'm sure they are. And the Congressional Black Caucus, Congressman Alcee Hastings from Florida, has made a call for pedophiles to get the same civil rights protection that Dr. King didn't have when they shot him down in Memphis, April 4th, 1968. I mean, these are strange days. The answer is we've got to start somewhere by cutting our losses. And it goes back to what I'm saying. We've got to go after these black necks. They need to understand. They all need to be worried. They need to start getting white security guards to protect them from their own community. Says, I don't know, if I come out, my car, someone scratched my car. I was against affirmative action because I was an A student. Hell, white people had affirmative action. What the F do you think happened to the Indians? That's affirmative action. I'm white, broken, diseased, and I get everything? And they worried about us getting a few jobs to pay taxes so the Federal Reserve can continue to steal from everybody, a bunch of corrupt Illuminati, European banking families with some Jews sprinkled in, getting everything, and someone's worried about one of us getting a job to pay into it so we don't have to starve, because if we are on relief, they complain about that. You know, they actually think that the SNAP card has Malcolm X's face on it. You know, that's how sick the people who oppress us are. They're crazy, and they're not going to get brighter. You've got to make yourself brighter to the point where it doesn't matter what they think.
Yeah, it's critical times, right? Well, we had Dr. Walter Williams on our show a couple of times, and you know, he is to the opinion that all these churches need to be shut down, and mosques and any other these religions, because they're created religions that people have to believe in and follow. But he tracks them all the way back to the historical time where they were created. and names all the writers and times, and I mean, he's phenomenal. And if you get a chance, you might want to listen to one of the shows that we have with Dr. Walter Williams on there. And
Walter Williams, he's a black historian?
Yes, Dr. Walter Williams, out of Chicago.
Walter Williams, I think I've met him over the years. It's been a long time. But a lot of what we see that we call religion, I mean, it's useless. And by the way, I call myself a Christian, and I'm comfortable with how I understand it. You see, I don't have a problem with seeing Nat Turner as a bishop or an apostle of black Christianity, or Denmark Vesey. And it depends on which Christianity you're into. I'm down with Blyden and with Crummell and with those kinds of people. But if you're talking about these kinds of people, Henry McNeil Turner, these people we like. Those folks, to me, knew who God was. T.D. Jakes, he doesn't know who he is. I mean, theologically, sexually, he doesn't know who he is. Yeah, I said that about him. You look suspect, T.D. You look suspect. And I mean, and you never take a stand for anything. If you're not a punk in bed, you're a punk in politics. You're a punk with the following that you have. You haven't educated or empowered the people. You're talking about manpower, and you're not really trying to be a man yourself. I have problems with all of them. So, I called him a punk, and I hope to meet him. I tell him he's a punk. And, at least he doesn't try to put a wig on like, what's that one, Eddie Long, who's doing all the little boys. In fact, had he been honest about the life he was living, he wouldn't have had to shell out $25-30 million of the people's money. They could have started a bank, because those boys are going to blow it, or their boyfriend's going to blow it for them. So, and, I'm not even so much mad about people's private lives. That's between them, their proctologist, the mortician, their insurance underwriter, and the people that they infect. But my issue is we need to survive, and our survival as a people is more important than some individual's issue. And I have to just say this while we're on this, because, I was down near Ryan, and I was warning Ryan, they've got that AIDS that can kill people in 2 to 3 years. Well, it's already down in the Mississippi Delta. You're going to see a lot of young black folks dying from AIDS. They're going to die quickly, and it blows up real fast. I mean, it blowed up on this boy real fast. He's here today, gone tomorrow. And in fact, we do need some religion. We need some morality, because as long as you have the young black man whose ego's been destroyed, his self-worth is destroyed, the only thing he thinks he has is a penis, and it may be bigger than other people's, but at the end of the day, if your big penis can't free you from oppression, can't get you a job, can't even keep the woman who has the bigger penis happy, it's not doing you a lot of good, because it needs something to go with it for it to really work for you. Unoiled, it's just another thing that gives you a headache. So we've got to just deal with something that teaches people how to interact with each other, how to even, if they got to, lay down with someone with a real spiritual commitment for creating something, instead of it simply being you having a testicle ache. And sisters, I haven't gotten to you. Some of y'all, skankzillas, and we've lost ourselves, and folk think, it's either, getting an abortion is like having a nail appointment. We really need something that teaches us our value and to respect one another and to think collectively as a group. So, in a sense, if people like T.D. Fakes, if Klepto Dollar, if Eddie Longstroke were teaching collectivity and joint economics and justice, I could work with them even if I didn't like everything that they were doing. But if they do none of those things, those niggas don't deserve to have a church. Someone should burn that thing down.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Well, we're down to 47 seconds left on the show. Do you want to give your website again before we go off there?
Twitter, Randy Short. Randy Short on Twitter. wrandyshort@gmail.com. God bless y'all. Stand up, fight back. We can win.
We will win. Stay strong, stay black, brothers and sisters out there.
Peace and love.
We're definitely gonna win. We have no other recourse but to win. And we're gonna win. We gotta keep that positive light out there. We're gonna have a lot of casualties, but we're gonna win. 10 times the casualties than the people that's actually gonna be able to get free. Good night, and this has been another episode of Wake Up African People.
Black
Peace
power,
and
good
love.
night, brothers and sisters.
Peace and love.
Kohl's Fall for You sale is going on now, and you can take an extra 15% off through Saturday. Go to Kohls.com to download your savings pass. Then use it on top of already great savings, like 30 to 50% off the LC Lauren Conrad collection. Save on denim for her, and save 30 to 40% on handbags and fall fashion accessories. Plus, everyone gets $10 Kohl's cash for every $50 spent. Right now through Saturday at Kohl's. Select styles, some exclusions apply. See store or Kohls.com for details.